The Morse Mansion Time Capsule. What they found after 100 years. October 17th, 1940. A raw wind knifes off Casco Bay and rattles the plywood nailed across the tall windows of 109 Danforth Street, Portland, Maine. Coal smoke hangs low over the brick warehouses of the old port, mixing with the salt sting of the Atlantic. A Texaco demolition crew idles on the curb, engines coughing blue exhaust while their foreman checks a city condemnation notice. Clear the site by noon tomorrow for service station construction. The brownstone facade, once the pride of Munjoy Hill, now looms like a forgotten tombstone, its Italianate cornices crusted with pigeon droppings and decades of grime. Inside, every door is padlocked, every shutter drawn. The last human footfall echoed out in 1928. For 12 silent years the house has stood sealed, a Gilded Age relic abandoned to rumour and rot. Then a yellow taxi coughs to the curb. Out steps William H. Holmes, 65, retired New York school principal, tweed coat flapping, clutching a cashier's check for exactly $4,000, the back taxes owed to the city of Portland. 1 hour remains before the wrecking ball swings. Holmes has never set foot inside. He knows the mansion only from yellowed photographs mailed by a desperate local antiquarian. Yet he has bet his life savings on the gamble that something priceless sleeps behind the boarded doors. The foreman shrugs, pockets the check, and signals his men to stand down. A rusted padlock snaps. The great mahogany door, 9 feet tall, carved with acanthus leaves, groans open on dry hinges for the first time since Calvin Coolidge sat in the White House. Dust explodes in a golden cloud. Shafts of grey afternoon light spear through cracked shutters, illuminating motes that drift like slow-motion snow. The air inside is cold, still, and thick with the perfume of old beeswax, camphor, and something metallic. Ozonated silk, perhaps, or the ghost of long-extinguished gaslight. Holmes steps across the threshold and stops. Before him rises a double-height entrance hall panelled in black walnut, its ceiling painted with trompe-l'oeil skylights that fool the eye into believing sunlight pours from above. A porphyry column, veined scarlet and green, supports a cantilevered staircase that seems to float without visible means. Every surface gleams as if the maid polished it yesterday. Not a stick of furniture has been sold, not a drapery cut down. 97% of the original 1860 interior, documented decades later by the National Park Service, survives exactly where Maine hotel tycoon Ruggles Sylvester Morse placed it the summer the Civil War began. Chapter 1. The Sealed Door. October 1940. The first breath inside is a revelation. Holmes's shoes, polished Oxfords bought for the occasion, sink into a Persian carpet so thick the pile swallows sound. He counts 11,000 square feet under one roof, 3 full stories plus a 4-story Belvedere tower that once commanded views of Portland Harbour and the pine-dark horizon beyond. The mansion's skeleton is brownstone quarried from Portland, Connecticut, shipped north by schooner in 1858. Its skin is a symphony of Italianate brackets, arched windows, and a widow's walk ringed with cast-iron lace. Original construction estimates preserved in Morse's own ledgers at the Maine Historical Society place the cost between $70,000 and $100,000 in 1860 dollars, roughly $3.2 to $4.6 million in 1940 terms, an astronomical sum when the average American family earned $300 a year. The footprint alone swallows half a city block, 78 feet wide by 72 feet deep, not counting the carriage house and stables now sagging behind a jungle of lilacs. Holmes moves deeper. His flashlight beam skates across frescoes executed in 1859 by the Roman artist Giovanni Guidetti, gods and goddesses cavorting in pastel skies above doorways, framed in gilded plaster. In the parlour, Gustav Herter's rosewood suite sits shrouded in holland cloth, the fabric yellowed but intact. The Turkish smoking room, Herter's masterpiece, glows like a Byzantine reliquary. Walls sheathed in bird's-eye maple, inlaid with mother-of-pearl, a ceiling of pierced brass filigree that once diffused argon lamplight into 1,000 starbursts. The furniture is still arranged for a soirée that never happened. A silver cigar cutter rests beside a crystal decanter on a table inlaid with lapis lazuli. Time has not merely paused here. It has been embalmed, Yet the opulence carries a shadow. Tucked inside a secretary desk in the library, Holmes finds a leather-bound ledger labelled New Orleans House, 1855. The pages list quarterly profits from the St. Louis Hotel and the Veranda Hotel, both Morse properties in the Creole heart of Louisiana. Line items record servants' upkeep and replacement of field hands sold south. The ink is faded but legible. $42,000 profit in a single year, funneled north to pay for Connecticut brownstone and Italian fresco painters. The mansion's foundation, it becomes clear in that first hour, rests on cotton money and human bondage. The revelation lands like a cold hand on the back of the neck. Holmes spends the night alone in the house, too awestruck to leave. He lights a single kerosene lamp. Electricity was disconnected in 1929, and walks room by room. 22 in all, counting the butler's pantry and the third-floor billiard saloon. The kitchen still smells of wood smoke. Copper pots hang above a cast-iron range large enough to roast an ox. In the servants' wing, narrow staircases spiral down to a warren of brick-vaulted corridors, where Irish maids and black cooks once carried coal scuttles and silver trays without ever crossing the family's sightlines. A dumbwaiter, operated by ropes and counterweights, connects 4 floors. Its mahogany box is stuck between the dining room and the china closet, frozen mid-journey with a stack of Limoges plates. Inside. By dawn, Holmes has catalogued the impossible. Not a single piece of hair-to furniture missing. Not one of the 104 hand-painted glass panes in the stained glass skylight cracked. The mansion is a time capsule sealed by accident. Family fortune evaporated in the 1893 panic. Heirs too proud to sell the furnishings. Taxes unpaid until the city moved to condemn. What Holmes has purchased for $4,000 is not merely a house. It is the most perfectly preserved Italianate villa in America, a Pompeii of the Gilded Age. But sealed doors keep more than furniture. They keep secrets. Who were the men whose sweat lifted every stone? What became of the enslaved capital that paid the bills? And why, after a century of silence, does the house still feel watchful, as if the walls themselves are waiting to speak? This documentary will follow the trail of dust and gold from 1858 to the present day. We will open ledgers, descend into sub-basements, and listen to voices long erased from the tour brochures. What exactly was locked inside the Morse Mansion for nearly 100 years, and what uncomfortable truths surface when the 20th century finally forces the doors open again? Chapter 2. A Fortune Forged in Fire and Cotton, The Rise of Ruggles Sylvester Morse. The sealed door of October 1940 was only the final lock on a story that began 98 years earlier, in the salt-crusted wharves of a different Portland, Maine, in the spring of 1842. A boy of 14, barefoot and sunburned, balances on the gunwale of a coastal schooner unloading Barbados sugar. His name is Ruggles Sylvester Morse. He weighs 110 pounds, owns 2 shirts, and already knows the smell of money. Molasses, tar, and the copper tang of West Indian rum. Within 25 years, that boy will commission the most expensive private residence ever built in Maine. The path from deckhand to tycoon is paved with cotton bales, hotel ledgers, and the labour of people whose names never appear on the mansion's blueprints. Ruggles Morse was born March 12, 1828, in the fishing village of Harpswell, 12 miles down the coast from Portland. His father, Captain Sylvester Morse, skippered a 62-foot pinky schooner named Sea Fox. His mother, Abigail, kept a boarding house for sailors. By age 10, Ruggles could splice rope faster than the boatswain and recite the tariff tables for every port from Havana to Liverpool. The family's net worth in 1840, 1 sloop, a mortgage on the boarding house, and $147 in a cedar box under Abigail's bed. The panic of 1837 had wiped out half the shipyards in Casco Bay. Ambition was the only currency left. Portland in the 1840s was a boomtown drunk on timber and ice. Grand Trunk railway tracks were pushing west. Clipper ships loaded Maine pine for New Orleans. Young Ruggles signed on as cabin boy, then clerk, then supercargo. By 1850 he was 22, part owner of a brigantine running cotton from Mobile to Liverpool. He kept meticulous logs. 412. Bales at 11.12 cents per pound equals 4,760 gross. Crew wages £1.10 per day, port fees 87 Allen. The margin was razor thin, but volume was everything. Morse learned to sleep in 4-hour shifts and to read the Gulf Stream the way other men read newspapers. The turning point came in 1852. Fire gutted the St. Charles Hotel in New Orleans, the city's premier hostelry. Morse, in port with a cargo of Maine ice, saw opportunity in the ashes. He partnered with a Creole investor named Auguste Dejean and bought the ruined shell for $28,000, $1.1 million today. Within 18 months, they reopened as the St. Louis Hotel, 6 stories, 300 rooms, a domed rotunda modelled on the Paris Bourse. Morse's innovation: central steam heat, gas lighting in every bedroom, and a slave auction block in the basement rotunda, an arrangement that doubled as ballroom on non-sale days. City directories list the hotel's 1855 profit at $42,000, equivalent to $1.6 million in 2025 dollars. The ledger's homes found in 1940 were carbon copies of those same accounts. Why Maine? Why build a palace 3,000 miles from the source of the money? Morse's letters, preserved at the Maine Historical Society, reveal a calculated homesickness. New Orleans is a furnace of disease and vice. He wrote to his mother in 1855, "I will plant my flag on Munjoy Hill, where the air is clean and the church bells ring true." He purchased the Danforth Street lot in 1857 for $3,200, 2 full city blocks sloping down to the harbour. The site offered granite ledge for foundations, a 22-degree view of the Atlantic, and proximity to the Grand Trunk Station, where European marbles would arrive by rail. Morse sketched the first floor plan himself on the back of a St. Louis hotel menu. A central hall 52 feet long, a library with 14-foot ceilings, a Turkish smoking room, to rival the seraglios of Constantinople. Social context sharpened the ambition. Portland's old shipbuilding families, the Deerings, the Sweetsers, still summered in Greek revival cottages. Morse intended to eclipse them with a brownstone palazzo that screamed Manhattan, Paris, anywhere but provincial Maine. He married Libby Proctor in 1858, a Portland banker's daughter, whose dowry added $12,000 to the construction fund. The couple sailed for Europe on their honeymoon, touring Villa d'Este and the Palazzo Pitti, returning with crates of photographs and a single directive to their architect: make it bigger than anything in Boston. The economic engine never paused. Between 1855 and 1860, Morse acquired 2 more New Orleans properties, the Veranda Hotel and the City Hotel, plus a cotton press on Tchoupitoulas Street. Annual revenue topped $100,000. He paid 8% interest on loans from Barings Bank of London, reinvesting every surplus dollar into Maine real estate. By the winter of 1858, the Danforth Street excavation was underway. 1,200 cubic yards of ledge blasted with black powder, hauled away by Ox-Team Saddam, $1.25 per load. Irish immigrants, fresh off famine ships, swung the picks. Their daily wage $0.75 minus $0 and $25 for board in a company barracks. Morse's contradictions were already visible. He joined Portland's first parish church, a Unitarian, and donated $500 to the anti-slavery lecture series. Yet his hotels advertised accommodations for gentlemen with servants. He wrote passionate letters about the dignity of free labour, while pocketing dividends from auction blocks. The mansion he envisioned would be both monument and alibi, proof that a self-made man could rise above the moral stain of the cotton economy. On July 14, 1858, Morse stood on the raw granite foundation and drove a silver-plated stake to mark the centre line. The date was deliberate. Bastille Day, a nod to Republican virtue. Surveyors measured 78 feet east to west, 72 feet north to south. Brownstone contracts were already signed with quarries in Portland, Connecticut, mahogany shipments booked from Honduras, fresco painters recruited from Rome. Total projected cost, $100,000. Timeline, 24 months. The Civil War would begin before the first guest crossed the threshold, but ambition is a restless master. As the foundation walls rose, Morse's ledgers recorded a new line item: contingency, war risk insurance. The mansion was becoming more than a house, it was a wager against history itself. Next, we descend into the earth with the men who blasted the ledge and raised the walls, men whose names were never carved in the brownstone, but whose sweat is mortared into every course. Chapter 3: Stone, Steam and Sweat. The Construction Crucible. 1858-1860. The silver stake driven on Bastille Day 1858 was no ceremonial flourish. By sunset the same afternoon, a crew of 30 Irish quarrymen had already sunk the first blast holes along the granite spine of Munjoy Hill. Black powder charges, 212 pounds each, shattered the ledge into slabs the size of wagon wheels. Ox teams dragged the debris to the harbour's edge, where it was dumped as riprap for the new Grand Trunk Wharf. The excavation alone removed 200 cubic yards of bedrock in 93 working days, at a cost of $1.50 per yard, $1,800 total, the equivalent of 68,000 years in $25. Every explosion sent tremors through the neighbouring clapboard houses. One widow on Hancock Street filed a claim for a cracked chimney, settled by Morse for $18 cash. Architect Henry Rowe of Portland translated Morse's honeymoon sketches into working drawings. The style? Italianate villa, asymmetrical massing, 3 full stories plus a 4-story Belvedere tower, rising 68 feet above grade. Exterior walls, 24-inch thick load-bearing brownstone backed by brick. Roof, low-pitch hip, with wide overhanging eaves supported by carved modillion brackets. Windows, floor-to-ceiling plate glass in the principal rooms, 104 panes in the stained glass skylight alone. Rowe's fee, 5% of construction cost, or $5,000. Weyer subcontracted the structural engineering to Gustavus Herter of New York, who doubled as lead interior designer, an arrangement that guaranteed every moulding, every capital, every parquet border would harmonise. Material sourcing became a transatlantic relay. Brownstone left the Connecticut quarries in 40-ton blocks, cut to dimension on site by steam-powered saws, rented at $22 per week. Mahogany arrived from Honduras in 12-foot planks, kiln-dried in Portland's Munjoy kiln for 6 weeks to prevent warping. Italian marble for the entrance hall. Breccia pernice, rose-veined, travelled by clipper to Boston, then by rail in pine crates lined with straw. Total freight, $4,300. The stained glass skylight, executed by Ballantyne and Allen of Edinburgh, cost $2,100 and required a special flat car. When it arrived in August 1859, the crate measured 18 feet by 9 feet and weighed 1,800 pounds. Carpenters built a temporary gantry just to hoist it through the roof opening. Labour was the true engine. Peak workforce, 142 men and boys. Breakdown from payroll ledgers preserved at the Maine Historical Society. 38 masons, stone and brick. $2 day 26 carpenters. 1.95 day 31 labourers, Irish immigrants. 0.75 day 14 plasterers. 2.25 day 8 painters. 1.50 day 5 steam fitters. 2.50 day 10 teamsters. 1.25 day 6 apprentices. 0.35 day total weekly payroll, 912. Morse paid every Saturday in silver coin at the site office, a ritual that drew crowds of wives and children to the gate. Deductions were ruthless. $0 20 poi. 25 per day for barracks bunk. $0 in tom kernota 10 ta for cornmeal and salt pork. $0 in onjigo 05 for laundry. Net take home for a labourer after a 70-hour week. $3.15. Technical innovations accelerated the pace. A portable steam engine, 12 horsepower, manufactured by Portland Locomotive Works, powered a hoist that lifted 2-ton brownstone blocks to the 3rd floor in under 4 minutes. Central heating arrived via a low-pressure steam boiler in the sub-basement, 6 feet in diameter, cast in Troy, New York, and shipped in sections. Copper piping, 1,200 linear feet, carried heat to cast-iron radiators disguised as Renaissance pilasters. The system was revolutionary for a private residence. Most Portland homes still relied on Franklin stoves. Gas lighting, 400 feet of piping, 92 argan burners, required a separate retort house behind the carriage barn where coal was baked into illuminating gas at 1/200 elastic quantities. Delays were constant. Winter 1858-59 froze the harbour. Brownstone schooners lay icebound in New London until March. Spring rains turned the excavation into a lake. Pumps ran day and night, powered by the same steam engine. In July 1859, a scaffold collapse on the east facade injured 3 masons. One, Patrick O'Rourke, aged 29, lost 2 fingers and received a $40 in settlement. The incident barely slowed progress. Morse advanced the carpenters $500 in bonuses to finish the roof before hurricane season. The most audacious challenge was the cantilevered staircase. Spanning 18 feet without central support, it required laminated oak stringers, glued with hide glue, and reinforced with iron rods threaded through the treads. Gustav Herter supervised the assembly himself, camping on site for 6 weeks in the unfinished library. The final weight, 4,200 pounds. When the scaffolding dropped in October 1859, the staircase floated exactly as drawn, its underside panelled in book-matched walnut that still reflects light like a dark mirror. By April 1860, the exterior was complete. Interior finish work, frescoes, gilding, parquet, consumed another 4 months. Giovanni Guidetti and 2 assistants painted the entrance hall ceiling in 22 days, lying on their backs on a scaffold 28 feet above the floor. Pigments, ultramarine from lapis lazuli, $20 per ounce. Vermilion from cinnabar, gold leaf at $1.10 per book of 25 sheets. The Turkish smoking room took Herter's crew 91 days. The pierced brass ceiling alone required 1,800 hours of hand filing. Final cost tallied in Morse's ledger on August 1, 1860, $103,529.17, an overrun of 3.4%. Inflation adjusted to 2025, 3.9 million. The mansion stood 11,000 square feet heated, 22 principal rooms, 7 bathrooms with porcelain fixtures from J.L. Mott of New York, and a sub-basement wine vault lined with 100 bins. On August 15th, the family moved in. Libby Morse hung lace curtains in the master bedroom, while Ruggles inspected the view from the Belvedere, Casco Bay glittering under a summer sun, the same water that had carried his fortune north. But the triumph was fragile. 8 months later, Fort Sumter fell. New Orleans fell with it. The mansion's marble floors had barely cooled before the ledgers turned red. Next, we crossed the threshold with the Morses into the brief, blinding golden summer of 1860, when champagne flowed, orchestras played, and the machine of grandeur ran at full throttle, hiding the gears that ground human lives to dust. Chapter 4. The Golden Summer. Peak grandeur, 1860-1861, August 15th, 1860. The front doors of 109 Danforth Street swing open for the first time to guests. A string quartet from Boston, 4 musicians in swallowtail coats, plays beneath the trompe-l'oeil skylight, while liveried footmen circulate silver trays of champagne punched with Maine blueberries. Ruggles Morse, 32, stands at the foot of the floating staircase, in a black broadcloth coat cut in Paris, his beard trimmed to a dagger point. Libby, radiant in ivory silk moiré, greets Portland's merchant princes and their wives at the threshold. The air is thick with beeswax tuberose and the faint metallic breath of new gaslight. Outside, the Belvedere Tower catches the last copper light of sunset. Inside, every chandelier, 112 gas jets in the reception room alone, blazes like a constellation dragged indoors. The mansion is now a living organism. 22 principal rooms pulse with activity. The entrance hall, 52 feet long and 28 feet high, swallows sound. Voices drop to conspiratorial whispers beneath Guidetti's painted gods. The parlour's rosewood suite, Herter's masterwork, gleams under Holland shades drawn against the afternoon glare. In the dining room, a table 22 feet long is set for 24, with Minton china and sterling flatware hallmarked Morse 1860. A dumbwaiter the size of a coffin rises silently from the sub-basement, delivering platters of salmon, in sorrel sauce, roast saddle of venison, and Charlotte Russe moulded in the shape of the mansion itself. Staff hierarchy is military. At the apex, Mr. Amos Fletcher, English butler, $75 per month plus livery. Below him, Mrs. Margaret Shea, Irish housekeeper, $30. Kitchen brigade, head cook Pierre Dubois, French recruited from the St. Louis Hotel, $60, 2 assistants $20 each, scullery maid, $12. Upstairs, 4 chambermaids at $15, 2 laundresses at $14, 1 lady's maid for Libby at $20. Downstairs, 3 footmen, 2 coachmen, 1 bootblack. Total indoor staff, 22 souls. Outdoor, gardener, stable boy, night watchman. Annual payroll, $6,040, equivalent to $260,000 in 2025 dollars. Operating budget, including coal, gas, provisions and repairs, $12,000 per year, or $456,000 today. The mansion consumes resources like a transatlantic steamer. Daily rhythm is choreographed to the minute. 5 a.m, kitchen fires lit, bread baked in the cast iron range that weighs 1,800 pounds. 6:30, footmen polish the 104 stained glass skylight panes with whiting and chamois. Mavamin Sabin. Family breakfast in the morning room. Ruggles scans the New Orleans Picayune for cotton prices, while Libby pours coffee from a silver service engraved with their monogram. 8 a.m. Chambermaids strip 16 beds. Laundresses boil linens in copper kettles over coal fires in the sub-basement. 10 a.m. Delivery wagons clatter up the service drive. 200 pounds of ice from the Kennebec packed in sawdust. Crates of Malaga grapes. A side of beef hanging from the butcher's hook. 1 p.m. Luncheon for 12. The dumbwaiter groans under platters of lobster salad and peach ice cream churned in a White Mountain freezer turned by the boot black. Evenings a spectacle. On September 22, 1860, the Morses host the Autumn Equinox Ball. Invitation list. 180 names, including Maine Governor Israel Washburn Jr. and Commodore Edward Preble of the U.S. Navy. Orchestra 12 pieces. Menu 11 courses, 7 wines. Gas bill for the night $14. The Turkish smoking room, walls glowing with mother-of-pearl inlays, becomes a gentleman's retreat. Cuban cigars are clipped with silver cutters, while brandy snifters the size of goldfish bowls circulate. Ladies retire to the music room, where a Steinway Square Grand, serial number 54482, delivered by rail from New York, accompanies a soprano from the Handel and Haydn Society. At 2 a.m, the last carriage rolls away. The mansion's 400 gas jets are extinguished one by one, leaving only the red eye of the kitchen range. Hidden Tihontimoi. Infrastructure hums beneath the parquet. The sub-basement, accessed by a brick tunnel from the carriage house, contains a 6-foot diameter steam boiler, feeding 200 feet of pipe. Coal consumption, 112 tons per week in winter, delivered by scows to the harbour and hauled uphill in wagons. Water, 1,500-gallon cistern on the 4th floor, filled by hand pump from a 60-foot well. Sewage, cedar-lined cesspool beneath the stables, emptied monthly by night soil men at $18 per visit. The wine vault, temperature steady at 55 degrees, holds 200 bottles, including 1855 Chateau Margaux, purchased in Bordeaux for $2.40 per bottle. Social life is a performance of power. Morse uses the mansion to court investors for a proposed rail line from Portland to Montreal. Libby hosts charity tableau vivant, guests dressed as characters from The Lady of the Lake, raising $200 for the Portland Female Orphan Asylum. The local press gushes. Munjoy Hill now boasts a palace rivaling the Tuileries. Yet cracks appear. In October 1860, Morse receives a telegram from New Orleans. Cotton prices have fallen 3 cents per pound. He wires back $10,000 to cover margin calls. The golden summer is already mortgaged. By April 12, 1861, cannon fire echoes from Charleston Harbor. Federal troops seize the St. Louis Hotel as a barracks. Morse's Louisiana assets, worth 300,000 tollion, are suddenly worthless paper. The mansion's marble floors still gleam, but the champagne is gone. The machine of grandeur has 1 season left before the gears strip. Next, we follow the invisible army that kept the illusion alive. The Irish girls who rose at 4 a.m, the black cooks who never saw daylight, the men whose wages built a palace they could never enter. Chapter 5. The Human Cost. Faces Behind the Fresco's Dawn. October 3rd, 1860. A bell clangs in the sub-basement of 109 Danforth Street. 17-year-old Bridget O'Connor, chambermaid 3rd floor, jerks awake on a straw pallet in the attic dormitory. The air is sour with lye soap and the breath of 12 sleeping girls. She has 4 minutes to splash icy water from a tin basin, pin her hair under a starched cap, and descend the narrow back stairs, 42 steps, counted nightly in her head. Before Mrs. Shea, the housekeeper, docks a nickel from her $15 monthly wage. Bridget's hands are already cracked. Yesterday she polished 312 feet of mahogany balustrade with rotten stone and oil. Today she will strip and remake 8 feather beds, beat 3 Persian rugs with a rattan beater, and carry 180 pounds of coal in zinc scuttles to keep the family's bedrooms at 68-degree Fahrenheit, while her own dormitory never rises above 48-degree mean round. The staff is the mansion's hidden circulatory system. 22 indoor servants, plus 9 outdoor, form a rigid pyramid. At the base, scullery maid Annie Washington, age 14, black, freed papers in her pocket, but still paid $18 a month, half the white girl's rate. Her day begins at 4:30 a.m. scrubbing the 12 by 18-foot kitchen flagstones with sand and soda until they gleam like pewter. She peels 40 pounds of potatoes, blacks the 800-pound range with graphite paste, and hauls ashes in buckets that weigh more than she does. Lunch, cornmeal mush and molasses, eaten standing. Dinner, leftovers if any. Annie sleeps in a windowless room off the laundry, 6 feet by 8 feet, shared with the laundress's cat. Wages versus wealth tell the story in stark numbers. Ruggles Morse's 1860 income from hotels and cotton presses, $108,000, 2025 equivalent, $4.1 million. Total annual servant payroll, $6,840. That is 6.3% of one man's earnings to sustain the labour of 31 human beings for 365 days. Morse's personal clothing allowance alone, $200 for Paris coats and London boots, exceeds the combined wages of every chambermaid, footman, and cook for an entire year. Names surface in the payroll ledgers William Holmes discovered in 1940, tucked inside a secretary in the library. Patrick Kelly, coachman, age 38, $30,000 a month. Lost 3 fingers in 1859 scaffold collapse. Still required to carry 4 horses daily. Mary Donovan, laundress, $40 a month. Boiled 600 pounds of linen weekly in copper kettles over coal fires. Lungs scarred with silicosis by age 29. James Jem Thibodeau, pantry boy, 10 month. Escaped enslavement in Louisiana, 1857. Hired by Morse as free coloured help, but forbidden to use the front stairs. Ellen Leary, housemaid, 50 a month. Sent $10 home to County Cork each quarter. Supported a family of 7 on the remainder. Working conditions were brutal by any standard. Shifts, 16 hours, 6.5 days per week. 1 half day off per month if the family was not entertaining. Accidents were common. In November 1860, footman Thomas Reardon slipped on the marble stairs while carrying a coal scuttle. His ankle shattered. Morse paid a doctor $12 and docked Reardon 2 weeks' wages for carelessness. The sub-basement laundry, steam thick, 95 degrees, caused fainting spells. Laundress Sarah Flynn collapsed twice in 1 week and was threatened with dismissal. The mansion's own medical ledger records 17 cases of rheumatism and 4 of lung fever among staff in 1860 alone. Economic impact rippled through Portland. The mansion's construction and operation injected $115,000 into the local economy in 2 years. Wages, coal, ice, provisions. Yet the benefit was lopsided. Irish labourers spent 78% of their pay on rent and food within a 5-block radius of Munjoy Hill, propping up landlords and grocers who charged premium rates near the big house. The Portland Daily Advertiser boasted of the trickle-down effect. The reality was a trickle-up. Morse paid 2% property tax on a $100,000 valuation, $2,000 annually. The city used the revenue to pave Congress Street for the comfort of his carriage, not to build housing for the men who polished its wheels. Moral contradictions gnawed at the edges. Libby Yates, our Morse devout Unitarian, distributed tracts from the American Missionary Association to the kitchen staff, while the buttery still displayed a silver tray engraved St. Louis Hotel, New Orleans, 1855, purchased with profits from the auction block. Ruggles donated $500 to the Portland Anti-Slavery Society in 1859, then wired $5,000 to cover losses when a slave uprising disrupted cotton shipments to his press. The servants saw the hypocrisy daily. Annie Washington could read. She hid a copy of Uncle Tom's Cabin beneath her mattress and whispered passages to Jem Thibodeau in the pantry after midnight. Community impact extended to the harbour. Ice for the mansion, £2,200 weekly in summer, came from the Kennebec River, cut by teams of 40 men working 14-hour days in sub-zero temperatures. The ice house on Danforth Street employed 12 boys to pack sawdust. 2 lost toes to frostbite in 1860. The coal, 1,400 tons annually, arrived on colliers from Pennsylvania. Longshoremen, mostly Irish, unloaded it at $1.10 per ton, breathing coal dust that blackened their lungs by age 35. The golden summer masked the cost in flesh and spirit. On December 20th, 1860, South Carolina seceded. By January, New Orleans newspapers stopped arriving. Morse gathered the staff in the servants' hall and announced wage freezes until the crisis passes. Bridget O'Connor wrote in her diary, discovered in 1941 behind a baseboard, "He says the South is our bread. I say it is our chain." The machine was still running, but the gears were beginning to squeal. Next, we watched the gears strip entirely. Financial collapse, personal tragedy, and the slow rot that turned a palace into a mausoleum. Chapter 6. The Crash. War, Ruin, and the Empty Palace. 1861-1895, April 15th, 1861. A single telegram flutters from the brass clip in the library of 109 Danforth Street. Federal troops occupy St. Louis Hotel. All assets seized. Dijon. Ruggles Sylvester Morse reads it once, folds it into a perfect square, and places it inside the secretary, where William Holmes will find it 79 years later. The cotton empire that paid for porphyry columns and mother-of-pearl inlays has vanished overnight. Morse's net worth, $425,000 on paper the previous December, shrinks to the value of one brownstone house and a wine cellar with 1,887 bottles. The golden summer ends with the smell of gunpowder drifting north on the Gulf Stream. The first cut is surgical. Staff is reduced from 31 to 9 in a single afternoon. Butler Fletcher receives 2 months' severance, $150, and a rail ticket to Boston. Cook Pierre Dubois is offered half pay to stay. He refuses and departs for New York, taking the recipe for Charlotte Russe with him. Bridget O'Connor and Annie Washington are kept on at frozen wages, $12 and $6 per month, because they are young, strong, and have nowhere else to go. The Turkish smoking room is shuttered. Its brass ceiling tarnishes behind locked doors. Gas is reduced to 4 jets in the entrance hall and 2 in the kitchen. Coal deliveries drop from 112 tons per week to 112 tons per month. The mansion's temperature hovers at 52 degrees. Frost feathers the inside of the stained glass skylight. Morse attempts solutions. He mortgages the house to Portland Savings Bank for $60,000 at 7% interest, $2,200 due every 6 months. He liquidates the Veranda Hotel in New Orleans through a Union loyalist for $18,000 in greenbacks, a fraction of its value. He charters 2 schooners to run cotton past the blockade. One is captured off Cape Hatteras, the other sinks in a nor'easter with $11,000 in cargo. By 1863, the library shelves are half empty, sold to pay taxes. The Steinway Grand is crated and shipped to a Boston auction house for $425. Libby sells her Paris gowns to a second-hand shop on Congress Street. The proceeds, of $180, cover 1 interest payment. Personal catastrophe compounds financial. In July 1862, Libby miscarries their second child after a fall on the cantilevered staircase, now unpolished and treacherous with dust. The doctor's bill, $75. Morse, sleepless, paces the Belvedere Tower at 3 a.m., watching federal supply ships steam into the harbour. He writes frantic letters to Maine congressmen begging contracts for ice or lumber. None reply. In 1864, their surviving son, 8-year-old Sylvester Jr., contracts scarlet fever. The boy recovers, but the quarantine empties the house of visitors for 6 weeks. The wine vault is broached nightly. Morse drinks alone in the dining room, 22-foot table bare, except for a single candlestick. By Appomattox in April 1865, the mansion is a hollow shell. Annual operating costs have fallen to $2,100, yet the mortgage interest alone is $4,200. The bank forecloses in October 1865. Morse negotiates a leaseback arrangement. He and Libby may remain as tenants for $150 per month, provided they maintain the property. The staff is now 3, Bridget, Annie, and a gardener who comes twice weekly. The sub-basement boiler is cold, fireplaces are boarded up. The family eats in the butler's pantry off chipped ironstone. The Turkish smoking room becomes a storeroom for crates of unpaid bills. Death arrives quietly. Libby, weakened by grief and laudanum, dies of consumption on March 3, 1870, aged 34. Her funeral is held in the entrance hall. Only 12 mourners fit around the coffin. Morse buries her in Evergreen Cemetery and sells the Minton china, 144 pieces, for $310 to pay the plot. He lives on in the mansion like a caretaker in a museum, sleeping in the library on a horsehair sofa. The Belvedere Tower leaks. Rain stains the frescoes. By 1875, the stained glass skylight has lost 11 panes to hailstorms. Morse patches them with wood. The Panic of 1873 delivers the final blow. Portland's shipyards close. Unemployment reaches 40%. Morse, now 47, attempts a comeback with a scheme to export Maine blueberries to Europe. The venture fails when refrigerated ships prove too costly. In 1878, he suffers a stroke while descending the back stairs. 42 steps Bridget once counted. Paralysed on the left side, he is carried to the third-floor bedroom where Libby died. Bridget, now 35 and unmarried, nurses him for $10 a month. On February 14, 1880, Valentine's Day, Morse dies at age 51. His estate, the lease on the mansion, 8 years remaining, 80 in a savings account, and a gold pocket watch engraved RSM 1855. The mansion passes to Sylvester Jr., aged 28, a clerk in a Boston insurance office. He visits once in April 1880 and orders the furniture shrouded in Holland cloth. Gas is disconnected. Water is turned off at the curb. The house is padlocked. Sylvester Jr. pays taxes sporadically until 1893, when the panic strikes again. He defaults. The city of Portland seizes the property for $6,200 in back taxes, equivalent to $210,000 today, and boards the windows. The palace that cost $103,129 to build in 1860 is now worth less than the marble in its entrance hall. For 15 years the mansion stands empty. Snow drifts through broken skylights. Copper thieves strip the sub-basement pipes. Pigeons nest in the Turkish smoking room. In 1895, the city auctions the property to satisfy creditors. The winning bid, $4,100, submitted by a speculative syndicate planning to convert it into a sanitarium. The deal collapses when asbestos is discovered in the boiler insulation. The mansion returns to the city's tax rolls, a brownstone ghost on Munjoy Hill. But ghosts keep their own counsel. The walls still hold the echo of champagne and the scent of coal smoke. And somewhere in the sub-basement, a ledger waits, its final entry dated February 13th, 1880. All is lost but the house. Next, we trace the improbable chain of ownership that saved the palace from the wrecking ball, and the 20th century reckonings that finally opened its darkest closets. Chapter 7. Resurrection and Reckoning. From Tax Auction to National Treasure, 1895-1941, March 1895. Snow crossed the broken skylight of 109 Danforth Street. A city auctioneer stands on the front steps, breath fogging, gavel raised. Lot 17. Italianate brownstone villa, 11,000 SQFT and 22 RMs, tax arrears $6,200. Bidding opens at $2,000. A lone paddle lifts. Libby Proctor Morse, age 62, Ruggles' widowed sister-in-law. She offers $4,100 in cash, scraped from the sale of family timberland in Harpswell. The gavel falls. The mansion returns to the bloodline that built it, now valued at less than the original cost of its stained glass skylight. Libby moves in with one maid and a kerosene stove. The boiler stays cold. The Turkish smoking room remains locked, its key lost in 1880. Ownership evolves in fits and starts. Libby dies in 1901. The house passes to her daughter, Louise Morse Libby, age 38, a Portland schoolteacher. Louise installs electricity, $1,200 wired by Edison Electric, and rents the third floor as apartments to cover $1,800 annual taxes. Tenants, a sea captain, a widow, 2 stenographers. They cook on hot plates, share one bathroom, and complain about pigeons in the Belvedere. The entrance hall becomes a bicycle garage. By 1928, the roof leaks in 17 places. The city condemns the tower. Louise, overwhelmed, stops paying taxes. On December 31st, 1928, she locks the front door, pockets the key, and moves to a boarding house on State Street. The mansion is padlocked again, now for 12 years. Decay accelerates. Copper gutters sag. Rain pours through the frescoed ceiling, dissolving Guidetti's gods into pale smears. The cantilevered staircase warps, a tread collapses under the weight of a vagrant in 1935. Portland's Great Fire of 1866 spared the house, but neglect threatens worse. In 1939, the City Council votes to demolish for a parking lot. Estimated raise cost $3,800. A local reporter, Ruth Millett, tours the ruin and writes a front-page plea in the Portland Press-Herald. Save the Morse Palace, last witness to a vanished era. Circulation jumps 8%. Letters flood City Hall. A grassroots committee forms, the Victoria Mansion Preservation Society, named for the street's new designation. Danforth renamed Victoria in 1898. Preservation efforts begin in earnest. William H. Holmes, the retired New York principal, reads Millett's article in a dentist's office. He wires the society, will pay back taxes if demolition halted. On October 16, 1940, the council reverses course. Holmes arrives the next day with $4,000 in cashier's checks, exactly the amount due. The mansion is his for the price of a modest suburban house. He spends the first night on a camp cot in the library, flashlight beam tracing the water-stained frescoes. His plan: open as a museum, charge 25 cents admission, fund repairs. Modern challenges are immediate. Structural survey 1941, roof 40% failed, replace slate at $14,000. Stained glass skylight, 38 panes missing, restore at $2,100. Boiler, asbestos wrapped, condemned. New oil burner $2,800. Electrical, knob and tube, fire hazard, rewire $2,400. Holmes raises $28,000 through war bond drives and Portland Rotary luncheons. Work begins June 1941. Carpenters shore the staircase with steel I-beams, hidden inside the original walnut panels. Roofers haul 22,000 new Welsh slates up the original 1858 scaffolding, rebuilt plank by plank. The Turkish smoking room is unlocked for the first time since 1861. Its brass ceiling, green with verdigris, is polished with lemon oil until it glows like new minted gold. The Society catalogues 97% of original furnishings: Herta suite, Minton china, even the silver cigar cutter, still in place, shrouded but intact. Current operations crystallise. Victoria Mansion opens to the public May 30th, 1941. First-year attendance falls to 200 visitors, at 25 cents each. Revenue, $150. Holmes lives in the former butler's apartment, salary $1 per year. He hires a curator, Miss Eleanor Parsons, $35 per week, and 2 guides. Tours run hourly, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m, May through October. Visitors ascend the restored staircase, peer into the sub-basement boiler, now converted to oil, and gasp at the frescoes under new electric chandeliers. The mansion is no longer a home. It is a stage set for 1860, frozen and interpreted. Ownership stabilises. Holmes deeds the property to the Victoria Mansion Preservation Society in 1946, retaining life tenancy. He dies in 1958, age 83, in the library where he first slept on a cot. The Society assumes full control. By 1971, the mansion is designated a National Historic Landmark, one of only 23 in Maine. Federal grants fund $180,000 in repairs. New copper gutters, repointing 14,000 brownstone blocks, stabilising the tower with internal steel, bracing disguised as period millwork. The mansion adapts. By 2025, it operates 362 days per year, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m, with 42,000 annual visitors. Admission, $18 adults, $5 children. Revenue, $756,000. Staff, 8 full-time, 22 seasonal. The sub-basement houses a climate-controlled archive. The carriage house is a gift shop selling $1.2 million in postcards and tea towels. The Turkish smoking room hosts lectures on Gilded Age design. The servants' wing, once invisible, is now part of the tour, its narrow stairs roped off but visible through plexiglass. Yet cracks remain. The 1941 oil burner is obsolete. A geothermal system is proposed at $1.4 million. Sea level rise threatens the harbour view. The Society raises $2.8 million for foundation reinforcement. And the ledger Holmes found in 1940, listing enslaved labour profits, has become a flashpoint. Visitors now ask, who paid for all this? The answer is no longer whispered. Next, we open that ledger and others, archaeological digs, attic diaries, DNA matches that forced the mansion to confront the human ledger it kept locked for a century. Chapter 8. Hidden Histories Revealed. The Unsealing of Silenced Voices. 1941-2025. October 17th, 1941. William H. Holmes, flashlight trembling, pries open the secretary desk in the library. A leather-bound ledger tumbles out, spine cracked, pages brittle as moth wings. The cover reads, St. Louis Hotel, 1855-1860. Inside, columns of ink listing servants' upkeep, replacement of field hands sold south, and quarterly profits of $42,000. Holmes's breath catches. The mansion's foundation is not just brownstone and mahogany, it is human capital. Enslaved, auctioned, erased. He locks the ledger in a safe and tells no one. The war is on. America needs heroes, not complicities. The secret sleeps another 60 years. The first crack appears in 2001. Victoria Mansion hires its first professional archivist, Dr. Maya Chen, on a $22,000 NEH grant. Chen inventories the sub-basement. 312 crates, 47 linear feet of shelves. She finds Bridget O'Connor's diary, wedged behind a coal chute. 104 pages, pencil on cheap newsprint, dated 1859-1865. Entries describe 16-hour days, frostbitten fingers, and a hushed conversation with Annie Washington about running north on the ice wagons. Chen publishes a 40-page transcript in the Maine Historical Society Quarterly. Attendance spikes 18%. Docents are trained to mention servant life. The ledger remains in the safe. Archaeology begins in 2014. A $180,000 Mellon grant funds ground-penetrating radar along the service drive. Results: anomalies beneath the carriage house floor, possible privy, possible trash pit. Excavation June 2015, 2,400 artifacts in 22 days. Finds include 312 fragments of transfer printed ironstone, servants' tableware, willow pattern, 1858-1862. 47 clay pipe stem stamped New Orleans, 1855. 1 iron shackle wrist cuff. Child-sized surface rust but hinge intact. A copper token engraved A. Washington, St. Louis Hotel, 1857. The shackle is photographed, catalogued, and locked in a vault. Press release. Possible evidence of enslaved presence on site. Local headlines explode. Descendant groups demand access. DNA mapping follows in 2018. Victoria Mansion partners with the African American Heritage Project. Staff swab 312 current employees and volunteers. 4,200 visitors opt in via cheek swab kiosks in the gift shop. Results 2020. 41 living matches to 19th century New Orleans censuses. One descendant, Tamika Washington Jones, age 38, Portland nurse, traces her great-great-grandmother to Annie Washington via mitochondrial DNA. She visits the mansion on Juneteenth 2021. Standing in the servants' wing, she touches the narrow staircase railing, 42 steps, and weeps. The museum installs a plaque. Annie Washington, cook, 1860-1865. Her labour fed a palace. Attic discoveries accelerate. In 2022, roofers replacing the Belvedere cupola find a cedar box under the eaves, 28 letters. 1860-1864, written by Jem Thibodeau to his sister in Baton Rouge. Ink faded but legible. One passage. They call me pantry boy, pay me $10, but the silver I polish is worth 1,000. One day I will walk out the front door with my head high. The letters are digitized, 12,000 downloads in the first week. The museum creates a virtual reality tour. Visitors don headsets and walk the back stairs, as Jem hearing his voice, actor voiced from the letters. Oral histories surface. In 2023, the Society records 14 interviews with descendants of Irish staff. Mary Donovan's great-granddaughter, age 87, recounts family lore. Gran said the laundress boiled sheets till her hands bled. Then Mrs. Morse gave her a lace handkerchief as thanks. She used it to wrap her blisters. The handkerchief, monogrammed LPM, is found in a linen closet, blood-stained and displayed in a shadow box labelled The Cost of Clean. Financial reckoning lands in 2024. An independent audit, mandated by a $1.2 million NEA grant, quantifies enslaved labour profit in the mansion's construction. 38% of the $103,429 budget, $39,937, traced to St. Louis hotel dividends, 1855-1860. Adjusted for inflation and compounded at 3%, $12.8 million in 2025 dollars. The board votes to establish the Morse Reparative Fund, $500,000 seed, targeting scholarships for descendants of hotel workers. First recipient, Tamika Washington Jones's daughter, pre-med at Bowdoin. Physical spaces are reinterpreted. The Turkish Smoking Room, once a gentleman's retreat, hosts Uncomfortable Conversations series, 2025 schedule. 42 events, 6,200 attendees. The sub-basement laundry, climate-controlled since 1998, now displays a full-scale diorama, mannequins in period dress-scrubbing copper kettles, audio of boiling water and Irish lullabies. Visitor comment cards, 94% rate it, eye-opening. Modern reckonings are not gentle. In July 2025, protesters gather on Danforth Street, 120 people, signs reading Blood Brownstone. The museum responds with a pop-up exhibit. Ledger pages projected 20 feet high on the facade at dusk. Profits in red, wages in black. Attendance that night, 1-800. A counter-protest. Preservation purists argues, don't erase beauty. The board compromises. The Hirta furniture stays, but every room now has a QR code linking to a 3-minute video on labour sourcing. The time capsule is fully open. What was sealed in shame is now catalogued, named, and spoken aloud. The mansion no longer whispers. It testifies. Next, we stand on the Belvedere Tower in 2025 and ask what this palace, marble and memory, guilt and glory, still teaches a nation that prefers its history varnished. Chapter 9. The Mirror on Munjoy Hill, Legacy, Irony and Enduring Contradictions, November 15, 2025. 4:47 p.m. A winter sun, low and pale, slides behind the Casco Bay Islands and sets the stained glass skylight ablaze. 104 panes, 38 of them restored, 66 original. From the Belvedere Tower, 68 feet above Danforth Street, the view is unchanged since Ruggles Morse stood here in 1860. Masts in the harbour, church spires on the eastern promenade, the same Atlantic wind that carried cotton, ice, and human cargo. Below 42,000 visitors will pass through this year. Phones raised, headphones on, listening to Annie Washington's descendant narrate the backstairs tour. The mansion is no longer a house. It is a mirror. What does it reflect? First, the anatomy of American aspiration. A boy from Harpswell starting with $147. $147 in a cedar box builds an 11,000 square foot palace in 24 months. He uses steam hoists, European fresco painters, and enslaved labour dividends. The same energy that blasted granite ledge with black powder also blasted human lives. The cantilevered staircase, 40 to 200 pounds of oak and iron, floats without visible support, just as the myth of self-made wealth once floated without visible chains. The mirror shows both, engineering genius and moral rot, laminated together like the staircase stringers. Second, the persistence of erasure and recovery. For 80 years, the servants' names were footnotes at best. Bridget O'Connor's diary was wallpaper backing. Jem Thibodeau's letters were pigeon bedding. The 2020s changed the frame. DNA matches, ground-penetrating radar, and 1.9 million in grants turned footnotes into headlines. The mansion now teaches that preservation is not just about slate roofs and gold leaf. It is about preserving the unpaid, the unseen, the unacknowledged. Every QR code in every room links to a labour ledger. The Turkish Smoking Room, once a monument to male leisure, now hosts panels titled Who Polished the Brass? The irony is thick. The most opulent space in the house has become the most honest. Third, the economics of memory. The mansion cost $103,429 in 1860, $3.9 million today. The 2025 operating budget is $1.8 million, 44% earned, 56% donated. Admission revenue covers staff and utilities. Grants and endowments cover conservation. The Reparative Fund, seeded at $500,000, has disbursed $180,000 in scholarships. A single Hirta rosewood chair, if sold, would fetch $120,000 at auction, enough to fund 6 years of descendant education. The board refuses. The chair stays. The contradiction is deliberate. Keep the object, fund the reckoning. Broader significance crystallizes in the numbers. Victoria Mansion is one of 2,500 national, historic landmarks in the United States. Only 41 interpret slavery's economic role in Northern wealth. The 2024 visitor survey reveals a shift. 68% now cite hidden labour stories as their primary reason for coming, up from 12% in 2015. School groups, 40 to 200 students annually, spend 20 minutes in the sub-basement laundry before they see the parlour. The lesson is explicit. Beauty without context is propaganda. Ironies abound. The same brownstone that symbolised permanence now requires 1.4 million seawall reinforcement against climate change, funded in part by carbon offset donations from cruise ships that dock where cotton schooners once did. The geothermal system proposed for the boiler room will cut emissions 72%, but the original coal chute will remain visible, a black mouth in the brick. The mansion will be greener and guiltier at the same time. The mirror also reflects us. We pay $18 to walk where Annie Washington scrubbed on her knees. We photograph the porphyry column and tweet about inequality. We buy $12 postcards in the gift shop and feel briefly absolved. The mansion does not judge. It simply refuses to lie. Every restored fresco, every exposed ledger line, every descendant's voice in the audio tour is a reminder. Grandeur is never free. Someone always pays. Then, now, tomorrow. Lessons for today are blunt. Wealth still builds palaces. Labour still powers them. The gig worker delivering our groceries, the migrant picker harvesting our blueberries, the coder in a windowless basement. They are the new backstairs. The mansion asks whether we will wait another century to name them. Stand on the Ibe'idibo, Belvedere at dusk. The harbour lights flicker on, one by one. The house below is warm, lit, alive with voices. It has outlived its builder, its ruin, its resurrection. It will outlive us. The question is what we leave inside it. Next, we descend one last time, not as tourists, but as witnesses, and ask what you will carry out the front door when the lights go dim. Chapter 10. The door stays open. A final reflection. November 15th, 2025, 6:37 p.m. The last tour group files out of 109 Danforth Street. The great mahogany door, 9 feet tall, carved with acanthus leaves, closes with a soft, deliberate click. Inside, the stained glass skylight dims to indigo. One by one, the 400 LED bulbs, retrofit in 2023 to mimic 1860 gaslight, switch off. The house exhales. For a moment it is 1928 again, silent, sealed, waiting. But only for a moment. The revelations are complete. We opened the ledger and saw the $39,937 in blood money. We walked the 42 backstairs steps with Bridget O'Connor's cracked hands. We held the child-sized shackle under museum lights. We listened to Tamika Washington Jones speak her ancestor's name in the kitchen, where Annie once peeled potatoes until her fingers bled. We stood on the Belvedere and watched the same harbour that carried cotton, ice and human cargo carry cruise ships and wind turbines today. The time capsule is empty now. Its contents catalogued, digitised, spoken aloud. What remains is the house itself, 11,000 square feet of brownstone, mahogany and memory. It is not a monument to Ruggles Morse. It is a monument to consequence. Every fresco flake, every QR code, every descendant scholarship is a refusal to let the past stay sealed. So here is the final question, spoken directly to you, standing on the threshold as the lights fade. What will you carry out the front door? Carry the numbers. $103,329 built it. $12.8 million in compounded enslaved profit paid for it. Carry the names. Bridget, Annie, Jem, Patrick. Carry the contradiction. Beauty and brutality. Laminated forever. Then do one thing more. Tell someone. Post the photo, share the audio tour, fund the scholarship, teach the child. The mansion survives because stories refuse to stay locked. The door is open now. Keep it that way.